Welcome everyone to the March meeting of the Halifax Water Board of Commission. We'll call the meeting to order, and the first item is the ratification of the in-camera motions. Could I have someone make that motion? Commissioner Kolomitzov?
Sorry, I was just wondering, has the recording started?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to make the motion?
Sure, I'll move that the Halifax Water Board ratify the in-camera motions.
Commissioner Zaharov will second that. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion has carried. Item 1B, approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Could somebody, any changes to the agenda? No? Could I have somebody make that motion?
Madam Chair, I can make that motion that the Halifax Water Board approve the order of business and approve additions and deletions.
Second.
Mr. Kent will second that. Any discussion? We'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Item 2, the approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on Thursday, January 26th. Can I have somebody put that motion on the floor?
I can make the motion, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I'll move that the Halifax Water Board approves the minutes of the January 26, 2023 regular meeting.
Can I have a seconder?
Second.
Commissioner Kent has seconded. Any discussion or amendments to the minutes? And so on that one, Commissioner Lovelace, we have you as absent. I think that's when you had to go to your other meeting, or do you want us to check?
Yes, no, it's fine. So I was at the in-camera and I was not able because of scheduling conflicts, unfortunately, with the water board.
Okay, thank you for that confirmation. Okay, all those in approval, agreeing with the motion on the floor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion has carried. Item 3, any business arising from the minutes?
No, Madam Chair.
No, thank you. Item 4, we have, we would like to highlight our focus on safety at the Halifax Water Board. And so we have now included a safety moment into the board's meeting. And I believe Kenda is going to do this.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. This is a new item for us to bring to the board for our regular meetings. And we figured it was a good place to start to provide an overview of our health and safety policy and philosophy. And so this is the opening document that we have in our occupational health and safety manual. And it's reviewed annually and endorsed by the general manager. And I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I do want to highlight that it's structured to promote the emphasis that we put on our health and safety work culture and making sure that our employees are part of the journey with us and ensuring we have a good health and safety program. And also that it sets the anticipation and expectations that it applies to our contractors that are working for us, our suppliers, and any other agencies that are part of our workplace. I do want to also highlight that, and you'll see in our core balance scorecard as we are adjusting our targets for lost time incidents each year now, that we're striving towards 0 accidents and injuries, and we want to make that part of our everyday culture going forward. And there's a few commitments that probably do want to highlight a bit more so that you get a good sense of where we're going and how we're structuring our safety program. So we ensure that our management and our employees and contractors are aware of their responsibilities for health and safety. As I said, we look at our documents annually and make the adjustments as needed. We are contributing to the ongoing development of safety components, practices, and procedures. So anytime there's adjustments to safe work practices or anything that's needed to ensure that we address any hazards that have been identified, that we act on those. So there's also the commitment to completing hazard assessments as we do our daily tasks. Also looking at our workplace site activities and any place where we can do any improvements to enhance our safety culture. We've been taking measures to implement and improve our reporting processes and making sure that corrective actions are followed up on. We're also trying to engage employees and promote a more collaborative communications with safety issues, and making sure overall that we're enforcing and complying with all the relevant legislation that we have with Department of Labor in our workplaces. And also we're improving and enhancing the way our joint occupational health and safety committees are functioning, and we'll be making some changes to the structure of those committees in the coming months. And again, this is all trying to promote our commitment to safety in the workplace and making sure that our employees go home without injury and are helpful or mindful of their health and safety in the workplace every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenda. And I think this is a great addition to the agenda. The board would like to support the safety culture at Halifax Water, as well as promote our commitment to it as well. So I think this is a great addition.
Thank you.
Item 4.1, operating results for 11 months ending February 28th, 2023.
Good morning.
Good morning, Alicia.
I'll be walking you through the operating results for the 11 months ended February 28th, 2023. Halifax Water continues to maintain a strong cash balance. We have seen a decrease over the prior year due to our increasing capital expenditures. As for the statement of earnings, our revenues have increased over the prior year. This is due in part to a 1% increase in consumption, along with an increase in rates effective December 1st, 2022. Our operating expenditures have increased compared to the prior year. We've seen an increase in our chemical prices, along with the regular increases in salaries and benefits, and an increase in contractor costs for the lead service line replacement program. But overall, our forecast for the year-end deficit is 7.1 million, which is an improvement over the budgeted deficit of 10.9. Most of this is related to the revenue forecast increases for the rate changes. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cuddle. Oh, the same thing happened.
Here we
to me.
go.
There you go.
My screens are backwards here. Yeah, I just have a question about the 1% increase in consumption. And I'm just wondering, which is related to the increase in revenue. I'm just wondering if you know what's driving that. Is it like higher usage of water, or is it more customers coming online, or what? I'm just wondering what's driving that increase.
We don't have it separated like by new customer. I could look into that, whether it's something we could provide. I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get back to you. Unless
Yep.
Louis might have more knowledge.
I think we don't have that analysis in front of us. We can certainly see what we can dig out of the system to answer. It is, well, this is basically this year. We have been watching the the overall consumption and has seen it increased and stabilized in the previous year, started to increase. So we did anticipate that there would be an increase in consumption this year. We continue to say we're getting back to something that resembles normal in terms of after the change in consumption patterns with COVID. So some of that is hard to predict over the last couple of years, just because our consumption patterns just changed so considerably over that. But we can certainly look at it in more detail for it.
Yeah, and I guess you kind of hit like where my question was going next there about whether, you know, if we're looking at it from year over year from 21-22 to 22-23, and I'm just wondering where we are in regards to, you know, returning to normal, or I don't call it normal anymore. I just returning to
New normal?
Yeah.
Yeah, we certainly have the information. We can certainly look at it and say what the longer term trend has been in my customer class. We can certainly provide additional information on that.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions for management on the operating results? Okay, moving on. Item 4.2, the 2023 spring debenture. I think this is you, Alicia.
Yep. Halifax Water is required to make a balloon payment of $13.8 million in the spring of this fiscal year, and this requires board approval to refinance the debt from 2013-14. This debt was acquired to fund wastewater capital additions, and it had an all-inclusive interest rate of 2.55%, but with increasing interest rates, we built our 23-24 operating budget using a rate of 4.05% for any refinance debt. There is the option to not refinance the debt, but with projected capital expenditures over the next period of time, we don't recommend not refinancing the debt. The next time we can get debt from the province will be in the fall of this year. And we will have more balloon payments, as well as we'll be looking at funding any capital additions for the fiscal year. Any questions?
Any questions for Alicia? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just wondering if we should put the motion on the floor first before the discussion?
Would you like to make the motion?
Yes, I can do that.
ahead.
I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the refinancing of $13,756,130 with a 10-year amortization term and financing over 10 years with an all-inclusive rate not to exceed 5.5%.
Second.
Commissioner Deagle-Gammon seconds that, and Commissioner Deagle-Gammon has a question.
So my question is just one of process. This would have gone through the Audit and Finance Committee prior to coming to the board?
Yes, it did.
Thank you. That's it.
And thank you for that question, Commissioner Deagle-Gammon. We have asked that that's included on all board reports. So we typically do note if the subcommittee has approved a motion previously, but good question. Any further discussion on the motion? Did you have a discussion, Commissioner Kolomeitsev?
Yes, and I did ask a few questions at the meeting on March 9th.
Okay. Okay, seeing no further questions, we'll vote on the motion. All those in support of the motion on the floor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Item 5.1, the capital expenditures for 11 months dated February 28th, 2023.
That is me again. Just wanted to give an update on where we are for our capital expenditures this fiscal year. As of February 28th, 2023, we have spent $69.7 million in this fiscal, which brings our total capital expenditures on active and closed projects in 22-23 to $121.7 million. We've seen a positive increase in our monthly expenditures compared to the prior year. We're spending approximately $6.3 million per month compared to $3 million in the prior year. Our delivery rate on the 22-23 capital budget is sitting at 24.4%. We will see this increase within the last month of our fiscal year as we receive some project progress claims and invoices as we capitalize some of the bigger projects. Any questions?
Go ahead, Commissioner Zaharoff.
Thanks, Alicia. Great to see there is some progress in the capital investment against the capital plan. I also requested information item a few days ago about the progress against the backlog of capital projects that is Halifax Water currently addressing. I was wondering, it's not about only the last year, but also the performance on the capital budgets that we had in the previous years. Where do we stand progressing these ones? So is this report going to be produced anytime soon, or similar to the last Excel spreadsheet that was distributed, or is that there is any challenge to present this information?
We are able to provide information similar to what was provided last time. We have been working on whether we can separate it by budget year. So this spend relates to this budget year, and this spend, it's not something that our current ERP produces easily. So we're trying to build a report that would produce that, but I can send you the information about previous year's spend subsequent to the meeting.
Thanks. I just found the capital expenditure report is very fiscal focused, I would say, and it's not really clear how much, what was approved, what was spent, what's remaining, and etc. So if we can have something more visual, that would be greatly appreciated.
I think the request from Commissioner Zaharoff too is for that to be in each board report on capital expenditures.
Okay.
Any other questions on the capital expenditures? Okay, item 5.2, JD Klein, WSP pretreatment clarification project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's me. I also have Sanjeev Tagra with me. Sanjeev is currently transitioning from his role as manager of water supply plants for Halifax Water to senior manager of strategic projects. So he's been working on this for quite a while and will be responsible for this program going forward. So we are seeking approval of $7.3 million for detailed design and what we're calling early works construction for the clarifier project at the J. Douglas Klein plant. This is an important milestone for us. It's our first project coming forward in our water supply enhancement program. And it's probably in the entire 13 projects in that program, it is probably the most important one and is going to address most of our treatment challenges. Rather than speak into the report, I'm just going to take a minute or two because we have been working on this for quite some time, and I know there's the board changes with board terms and things. So I'll perhaps give a little bit of background. So this is something we've been working on since 2012, and in 2012, for the first time ever in Halifax Water's recent history, we had the occurrence of geosmin in the Pockwalk water supply, which is a taste and odor causing compound. So we spent some time trying to figure out how that had arisen. Then in 2015, Dr. Graham Gagnon, through our research chair partnership with Dalhousie, came to understand a phenomenon called lake recovery or lake browning. And what that phenomenon is in North American society, we've done a very good job of dealing with acid rain and hydrogen sulfate deposition from the 1970s. As a result, a lot of lakes that had depressed pH, the pH has gone up in them. And at Pockwalk and Lake Major, very gradually over about 15 years, the pH has gone up by a full pH unit, which is pretty significant. And as a result of that, we find that the water has more natural organic matter. And also it has a greater biotic population. So more fish are living in it, but also more things like plankton and algae as well. And that creates treatment challenges. And then further to the geosmin in 2012, around 2016, we had a sudden wind change in Pockwalk Lake that caused a rapid turbidity spike that the plant was challenged managing. We operated successfully, but it was pretty much in emergency mode for 2 or 3 days. Then in 2018 at Pockwalk, we had a bloom of a planktonic organism called Tabellaria, which had the same effect, only that went all summer, and we operated in an emergency mode for about 2 months. And then in 2020, we had a potential threat of algal toxins at the Lake Major water supply plant. And all of that is derived from this lake recovery phenomenon. And so the plants were becoming more challenging to operate. In 2015, because of the challenges we were experiencing operating the plant at Lake Major, we retained an international consulting firm named HDR to come in and try to optimize the project and look at the operational issues. And they presented to us about a 10-year program for upgrading that plant. We got to work on that program, and it was very complex. There was a lot of interdependencies of which do you do first, and how can I fix this if I haven't fixed the other one, and vice versa. So we did a couple more things in 2019. We put out a couple of calls for proposal, and one was to further refine and help us with that capital plan for the Lake Major plant. And that was won by a combination of local consulting firm CBCL and Hazen & Sawyer. Hazen & Sawyer is an international consulting firm who's got tremendous strength in the drinking water area. So they began that project. And then later in 2019, we put out another call for proposals. Our J. Douglas Klein plant was designed in the 70s, and it's a direct filtration plant. Most treatment plants have a clarification or solid settling step before the filters. Because the water quality was so good at Pockwalk, it was designed as direct filtration, which does not have that settling step. However, that makes the plant more challenging to operate when you have things like turbidity spikes and plankton blooms and such. So we hired, we put out a call for proposal to look at designing a clarification step, but also to look at, that plant is now 45 years old, and other, equipment replacement and operational improvements that we could have. So they got working on both of those assignments. A couple things became apparent is that the two plants are interdependent. They pick up for each other through some of our emergency supplies when one plant is challenged. A number of the issues that we needed to deal with, or the number of issues we needed to deal with, were it was a longer list than we had originally thought. We also determined that the Pockwalk plant, which the water quality of Pockwalk had changed enough that the plant is actually operating outside the water quality envelope that a direct filtration plant is designed for. So we decided to combine those two consulting assignments into a program, and our consultants came up with what we're now calling our Water Supply Enhancement Program, which is a combination of, it's now 13 projects to be executed over the next 10 years. 2/3 of those projects are at the J. Douglas Klein plant, and the other third are at the Lake Major plant. And the plan also primarily includes installing clarifiers for the first time at Pockwalk. It includes changing our clarifier technology at the Lake Major plant. It also includes a few things like a new intake and low lift pumping station at Lake Major, new treated water storage at Pockwalk, upgrading the pumping station at Pockwalk, and at both plants, installation of advanced treatment for things like taste and odor and algal compounds. So the first big project is the Pockwalk clarifiers. We've selected DAF technology, which is pretty widely used in Atlantic Canada, northeastern US, and in Europe for water that's similar to ours. As part of the program, we've been piloting that technology at both plants for the last 2 years to confirm the design parameters and make sure the technology is appropriate. And detailed design of the clarifiers at Pockwalk is just beginning. So in an effort to keep advancing the program as fast as we reasonably can, we are seeking approval for money to complete the detailed design of the plant. But also we've got the preliminary design developed to an extent that we can begin some early work that will be necessary to execute it. And that early work includes moving a SCADA tower that is now too close to what will be the construction site for the new clarifiers, mass excavation and rock removal to prepare the site for the new clarifier building, and site grading. We want to purchase some long delivery item pipe that will be used for a temporary raw water main bypass when we get into the clarifier project, and of course, complete the detailed design. So that is the end of the presentation. Sanjeev and I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Reed. I believe Commissioner Lovelace would like to make the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Reed, for the presentation. I move that the Halifax Water Board approve funding for the Water Supply Enhancement Program at JDK 800.10 pre-treatment and clarification, detailed design and early works project at an estimated cost of $7,300,000.
I'll second that.
Thank you,
Commissioner
Commissioner. So just speak on this a little bit. I think this is vitally important, obviously, to make these capital investments to ensure that we're meeting our regulatory requirements, that we have an infrastructure system that's able to be flexible with the changing environment and the climate change in particular that's happening. But the other thing, Reed, I think that's really important for us to recognize is the overall watershed system that's feeding into the Pockwalk Lake is also changing in the sense that as East Hants continues to develop around West Lake and Lacey Lake and in the Etter settlement and Mount Uniacke overall, that entire area is growing up. And so, we're losing that sort of wetland protection as we see the forested area become more housing and more subdivisions and that growth, which impacts the Pockwalk Water Lake quality overall. So I am, in complete agreement with moving forward in these changes and recognizing that it is an older, system that needs to be upgraded, and that's great. But I am concerned around how do we mitigate some of these protections around that watershed to ensure that the water that's entering that lake has a higher quality, considering how close it is to Highway 101 and the infiltration of salt and toxins and so on that are coming off of that highway. And I just wonder if you can speak a little bit about increasing the quality of the water that's entering that lake.
Yeah, certainly. Well, and first of all, to review for all the commissioners, we are in a very fortunate position, and this goes back to, in fact, the 1960s. A lot of people that were around at the time when they first began developing the Pockwalk water supply. We control, I'm going to say, maybe Sanjeev, if I'm going to say 85% of the actual natural Pockwalk watershed. Most of it's owned by the Crown. We jointly manage it. And that will remain undeveloped except for forestry that we do, which is aimed at keeping the forest young and diverse and resilient in that way. You are correct that the remaining portion of the watershed is across Highway 101 in East Hants. We do not control We control some of it. It's outside our designated water area, which is protected by regulations. So I can say a couple things. We have purchased private land on the north side of Highway 101 over the years when the opportunities presented, and then we include it. The second thing I can say is the municipality of East Hants sits on our Pockwalk Watershed Management Committee. We have a municipal councillor, we have a private citizen, I believe, and we also have a staff person from East Hants. Our relationship with East Hants has been very cooperative over the years, to the point of when they have a choice of doing A or B, and we think A is preferable, they will do A. If it's something good for East Hants versus not, then sometimes we have to live with the results. So a good example is they have a small industrial park in Mount Uniacke that is on the fringes. They're not prepared to promise not to develop that industrial park, but they have followed our best practices and work cooperatively with us, and have done things like keeping more hazardous industries outside the natural watershed and allowing more benign industries in the back of the watershed, or in the watershed. But at the end of the day, it is a separate municipality. So I think we're reasonably well positioned that way. However, it is a concern because I think the work we've done to manage the forest in the land that we control has been very effective, and we don't have that level of control in the others. But I mean, that speaks to your point of this is about making the treatment plant more resilient. And once we're complete with this program, we will have a very resilient plant that's able to manage a number of challenges that come out.
And on that note, Reid, and I completely understand, it is cross-jurisdictional, obviously extremely important to be working with all parties. And you're right, we wouldn't want a big, industrial use of that business park that could impact the Pockwalk watershed. That being said, if the province is using, Lacey Lake, for example, as a means for a stormwater holding system for the stormwater that's running off of Highway 101, which is then feeding into our Pockwalk watershed, I'm just hesitant to claim that we're kind of out of the woods here, because as you know, watersheds are all connected. And so thinking about how we can encourage the provincial government to use kind of a more storage system that doesn't connect to the Pockwalk watershed for their stormwater off of Highway 101 I'm not sure if that conversation is taking place, but it is a concern overall to have a stormwater holding system off Highway 101 that feeds into the Pockwalk watershed.
Yeah, and thank you, Commissioner.
I'll just jump in. Thank you, Commissioner Lovelace. Those are great comments, and I think Reid will continue to address those on the water quality from the water plant. I think we'll just move on based on time. Commissioner Deagle-Gammon had the next question.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A very interesting project. Wow. One of the things that I was trying to think of, or what I was looking at is, the contingency is 10% on each sort of section of the project. So part of me was wondering where things are running. How confident are you in that 10%? And if by some miracle comes in under, I would assume, because we're at about 400,000 there, so collectively, then it would probably just go back into a capital fund. But the second question is really around timelines. In the report that was done by, CBCL, they were thinking that the design tender should be out by the November of 24. So I'm just wondering if you think that is that still the timeline that we're in, and then maybe construction and commissioning being done by 2026. Just wondering what you think is that a timeline that people should be looking towards, or that we should be seeing?
Yeah, Sanjeev, do you want to address that?
Yeah, no, so the reason, can everybody hear me? First of all, so thank you. So the reason we have 10% contingency is there's kind of small packets, and we're fairly confident in those packets. That's why we have kept the contingency to 10%. So that's that. And yes, if we are under it, it's just going to go into the overall capital pool. And in terms of the second question, yeah, the idea is we'll be able to have a tender price by next year. It's going to be a year-long kind of detailed design and tendering exercise. And the idea is once we have that tender, we're going to come for additional funding to complete the project. That way our costs are, like once we complete detailed design, our costs become, or cost estimates become much more clearer. And as we tender, then we have actual tender pricing rather than some form of a class estimate. So that's the idea. But the timelines are, those are the timelines we are fairly confident with if we keep rolling at the pace we are.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Cuddle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, you know, I just want to follow up on what Pam was saying, because I think this whole issue around stormwater management and our water supply is important, but I think the whole question around stormwater management is important across the board, right? And so I know this conversation, it keeps coming up, because even though stormwater management from our own assets and infrastructure into areas where people are on wells and have drinking water that comes from ground sources is all part of the management of a good water supply for the municipality as a whole. And I know we're working on the one water strategy, but I think this is a conversation. I don't know if we move this to the Environment, Health and Safety Committee or somewhere like that, but I think we do need to take a broader look at watershed management, not just from Halifax Water, but the municipality, our neighbors in the province, and really have a good strategic plan in place about how, as the people most concerned about drinking water, what we can be doing to ensure that that we have clean water for all of our citizens. But I'll leave it there for now, and hopefully we can pick this up somewhere else down the line. Thanks.
I think that's a great comment in support of Commissioner Lovelace's comment. So maybe we'll ask management to make sure that that's on the Environment, Health and Safety Committee for both stormwater management and the watershed area. I think that's a great idea. Thank you for bringing that forward. Commissioner Zahara?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Two questions, one of the submission itself and one more maybe on the technical side. So, Reid, thanks so much for providing the project charter. It's great to see. For similar projects, it's 131 million currently estimated project, multi-year, multi-phased project, and current schedule quotes 3 key phases: concept, RFP, design, construction, commissioning. That's kind of standard for every project. For multi-year, multi-phase projects, could we, for future submissions, could we see a schedule of key milestones with associated dollar figures to that, to understand what's going to happen over, 24, 25? I understand that there is a requirement for specific phases budgets approvals, but it would be great to see progress or specific key milestones for such a significant project over the next few years, not just spend profile that is provided here. So I suspect spend profile was based on something. If we can have a little bit more information on the milestones, that would be great.
Yeah, certainly we could do that in the future. And I think, Sanjeev, we probably have some more information we can share with the commissioner. So,
yeah, not this submission specifically, but overall for multi-year, multi-phase projects, that would be great to see a little bit more, less financial, but more executional presentation. And on the technical side, I believe there is a mention of the temporary pipe that would be installed in place. I suspect it's a risk mitigation, like a temporary bypass. Is this the pipe that is going to cost $2 million in the budget? Is that the one that do I make the correct connection correctly?
That is correct. Sanjeev, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so that is correct. And the reason we are taking this risk mitigation approach is because we have a single raw water main coming in. And in order to keep the plant operational and not have any accident, and if it goes wrong, the risk is too high. So that's why we are proposing that pipe. However, that pipe will stay on site and can be used in future as a redundant pipe or as a backup as well. So the sole item, we are buying it for this project, but it has the ability to be retained on site and used for future uses as well in case of emergency.
Okay, so it's not one-time sunk cost. This pipe could be used for other okay, projects as well. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Kolomeitsev?
My question was what would happen to that pipe after this project? So that question was answered. But I was also wondering, how close are the two SCADA towers going to be next to each other? And will they be operated simultaneously? And will that cause any issues that you need to address?
No, the existing SCADA tower will be decommissioned once the new one is constructed and commissioned.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Item 6.1, the corporate balance scorecard. Louis, do you want to present?
Yes. And there is a presentation that's going to go along with it that we'll share. We can add to the diligent after the fact. So Jake, if you're going to work the slides, if you can go to the next one. Yeah, so Halifax Water's been on, has had a corporate balance scorecard going back to 2001. We go through this as a way to help measure the organization, to make sure employees are aware of what we're trying to do. And this really tries to hold us accountable for what we're doing as an organization. Every year we do have the opportunity to adjust it as required, and as we go through, we did provide a couple of suggested changes for the current year. So I think we're all familiar with this, our new purpose statement and the vision for the organization. So I won't repeat it, but we are the organizational indicators. Our corporate balance scorecard is designed to be able to hold us accountable to what we have in both our purpose statement and our vision. We've also in the current year reconfigured the corporate balance scorecard to tie into our 4 pillars. So the pillars came into place, I think last year. This is the first year that we've reconfigured it to match the 4 pillars. So we have items under people, health, safety, and environment, financial and regulatory accountability, and operational. So I just mentioned the conversion to the 4 pillars. So each one of the indicators provides a goal, a target for us that we are trying to meet. And I just wanted to reinforce that these indicators are set by the board. So if the board at any point feels that what we've presented should be modified, we welcome the changes. If there are additional indicators that the board thinks we should add, again, happy to incorporate into our corporate balance scorecard. So the corporate balance scorecard, one of the ways that we use it is we have a organizational performance award program, which takes some of the indicators, 12 to be specific, and we look at how we have, whether or not we've met the expectations under those targets. If we have met them, then there is a ability to pay performance bonus to every employee in the organization. There are 2 key indicators that if we do not pass them, if we do not meet the requirement, there is no award, regardless of our success in any of the others. So we'll go through those in a second as we go through the report. So these are the indicators that are used as part of the program. So I won't read them, but I will highlight the two that are we describe them as the gateway indicators that we must meet. One is the operating expense ratio. What that does is it compares what we have in the expenditures to our revenue. If we do not hit that target, we will not have the money that's required to finance the award. So that's an essential gateway indicator that we must meet to be able to have the funds to pay out the award. The other one is around our safety, and it's the number of lost time accidents per 100 employees. Again, really reinforcing the organization's commitment to safety. You can go to the next one. So in terms of those 12 indicators, so what we have is an award that is tailored to our success in meeting those indicators. So if we get less than 7, there is no payout. If we get more than 11 or 11 or more, the payout per employee is $1,000. If we can go to the next slide. So what I have, and these may be hard to read in the presentation, but they're all taken right out of the board package. I did want to highlight on the financial side that the changes that were proposed this year. So our current gateway indicator, our expense to revenue ratio, includes depreciation. What we're proposing to do is to take depreciation out of the calculation and to reduce the ratio accordingly. So depreciation is about just over $32 million to the organization. It isn't something that employees can really control. So in terms of a measure of our success as it relates to our employees, depreciation is something that we're recommending we take out. The other part about depreciation is in the way we are pushing to increase capital. If our capital spend, if the assets we bring into production are higher than we had budgeted, it would have a negative impact on the ratio and potentially our payout of the award. So what we're proposing is by taking it out, we don't penalize potentially employees for increasing our capital spend. So we think it's an important distinction that we're trying to make this year. The other percentage that's there that I'll highlight and would welcome input from the board is our capital budget expenditures. So in the past, we've set the bar quite high relative to the amount of current year capital that we spend. As Alicia talked about in her update on capital spend, currently we're at about 24.4% of the current capital budget that was spent in this fiscal year. So that we have been setting targets that we have just not been able to meet. So what we're proposing is we would reduce the target from the current level to 40% for next year. Our goal is to obviously be considerably higher than 40%, but recognizing the challenges that we've faced to get to that level, we think it's an appropriate starting point for the current for the next fiscal year for 23-24. If you can go to the next slide, Kate. So again, these are all in the report, highlighting again the safety aspect and the lost time incidents as a gateway that we must achieve. For the most part, we do not have issues in terms of our ability to meet these, but obviously they're tremendously important to the organization. On the next slide, similarly, the measures continue to track items that are important. There are several that are difficult to produce mid-year. Training is one that we have highlighted in terms of it's just difficult to track mid-year, and the results come at the end of the year. So we continue to provide the number of people that have been trained, but not necessarily the the ability to provide within the measure. Again, similar, we are continuing to meet the expectations here under these operational excellence items. They all are dedicated, or some are dedicated to our ability to meet our water distribution requirements. We talk about our testing, we talk about outages as it relates to our targets. We continue to be with the ability to meet those projections in the current year. There are a couple of new measures that we're proposing this year related to how we are able to support the development community and the ability to bring Halifax Water's impact on bringing new construction to market. So that the two new ones are the response time for service connection permits, and the second one is response time for subdivisions involving system extensions. Both of those are within Canada's regulatory compliance. We have benchmarks that we set for ourselves of 3 days in one and 4 weeks on the other. And our expectation is we'll be able to meet those requirements, those benchmarks, at least 80% of the time. If you go on to the next one. Again, similar types of measures, the peak flow reduction from wet weather management, we haven't been able to produce this year. The expectation it will be there in the June report. The energy management information also not quite available yet, but we will be reporting on that in June. The other measures we continue to meet. And finally, on the people side, customer service satisfaction comes out of our employee survey. Our customer survey that's provided, the employee satisfaction survey, we continue to strive for an A. We are once again at a B+ in the current year. We do expect that it will be difficult to maintain the B+. As we go into our union negotiations, those tend to be quite challenging and will have the potential to impact our rating. We continue to strive for an A, and we're not prepared at this point or not recommending that we reduce that target. The other item, the average number of days absenteeism, it says not yet available. We do have a preliminary number of approximately 9.81 as our number of days of absenteeism, higher than the target. But we will continue to investigate what the cause of that is, and we'll be able to report in more detail in June. So this is just a summary. Again, it's the corporate balance scorecard has been important for us as an organization. It does affect our ability to operate the utility. It does support that. The award program is something that reinforces that by providing a benefit to the employees. We have to achieve a minimum of 7 of the 12 measures, including the 2 gateway targets. And by meeting those, we're able to fund the program. And then in June, when we go back to HRM, we are required to present the corporate balance scorecard results to HRM as well as the Halifax Water Board. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, can I have someone put the motion on the floor? Commissioner Cuddle?
I can do that. Yeah, I move that the Halifax Water Board approve the corporate balance scorecard targets for the 23-24 fiscal year, including the organizational award program, which is tied to the outcomes of the corporate balance scorecard organizational indicators as detailed in this report.
I'll second.
Commissioner Kentna, second that. Any discussion? Commissioner Zahara?
Madam Chair, I have quite a few questions, so perhaps I may just wait until the end to give my colleagues the opportunity to ask, and then I will jump in.
Okay, Commissioner Kolomeitsev?
Thank you. My first question was, what is considered absenteeism? Does that include sick days?
Heidi, I don't know if you would like to respond to that one.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Yes, it does. It includes sick days below, if you take more than 6 months, then that's not included, but anything below a 6-month time period would be included in that number.
So would the goal would be fewer sick days for employees then?
Yes.
I have a bit of an issue with that from the perspective of encouraging people to come into work when they're sick, especially if we are spreading illness. I think my perception of that anyway is that sick days are necessary and are not something that we should be discouraging for employees, understanding that we need we want to make sure if there's something going on, like you said, if that was a very high number, maybe there's a concern there, but I would not want to give the impression that we are discouraging employees from taking their sick days when they need them.
Absolutely correct. And so Halifax Water is on the same page as you. We certainly don't want to encourage our employees to come into the office when they're not feeling well. And the intention of this metric is simply to allow the organization to monitor the average amount of time that is being taken, because it is, of course, an average that is calculated. And so ultimately, what it allows us to do is to understand whether or not we're having employees who are taking a high level of sick time, which could lead to us investigating other potential issues within the organization. So are there other things that are causing this level of sick time that we can address to help deal with it? And I would point out that this particular metric is not connected to the organizational award. And so therefore, there's no incentive there for the employees to say, well, I better not call in sick because if I do, it'll impact whether or not we get that award. So it really is just an opportunity for us as an organization to have a barometer as to how often people are taking their sick days and whether or not it indicates to us that there's a larger issue that we need to be addressing.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. That answers my second question, was whether it was tied into that award. That makes much more sense that it's not a factor there. Thank you. I have one other question unless someone else has one.
Go ahead.
So for the employee satisfaction, I was wondering if you know roughly what the percentage of employees would be that actually submitted that or participated in there.
I'm guessing approximately 65% of the employees completed the survey. The number of employees that did was below what we had received the previous years. And we haven't looked at any detail as to what would have driven that number, but that was a disappointment this year over year in terms of the number of employees that completed the survey.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Zahara?
Maybe clarification of the submission itself. I thought there were two indicators to be changed, which is capital budget expenditure and the removing depreciation and adding two more. But I think you were also suggesting to lower the bar for the employee satisfaction. Is that correct? No?
No,
I misunderstood. Okay. Then on maybe with a shorter one on the additional measures, I think if there are some changes already proposed, perhaps we could look also into introducing an additional measure on cybersecurity training for the employees, which was sounds like one of the required outcomes from the previous meeting that we had, without going too much into the details. So something for Halifax Water to consider. Sounds like cybersecurity training is requires some attention. On the, yep.
Sure, we can certainly see if we could develop a measure that we can that would make sense to the board and for us to be able to measure. I think cybersecurity training will have to be a little more sort of defined in terms of what aspect of cybersecurity training, because the program's going to change over time. But we can certainly look to add a measure related to that.
Okay. Thanks. On the CapEx, so
my apologies, Commissioner
sorry.
Zaharoff, just before you
Yep.
continue, just to ensure that I appropriately note that action that you've just requested. Is
Yep.
this something that you would like the staff to consider in connection with the action plan that will be presented to the board in June, or in a, you do? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Not necessary to do many things in parallel because it's all ends up with the same action plan. Thank you. Thanks, Heidi. Madam Chair, can I keep going? I know I have a few on the CapEx, which is, near and dear to my heart.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so 40% is a drop by half from the current one. The challenges with delivering on the CapEx plan are known for years. And last year when I suggested to revise it, I think the response from Halifax Water staff was that, no, we think we're fairly confident we can do better. Now you guys suggesting to drop it by half without providing any more details on how it will be addressed in the upcoming 5 years. It's basically, if I'll rephrase it from my perspective as I see it, it's basically 5 years break, and then maybe the capital delivery will be better. So can you explain, please, the connection between constantly increasing CapEx submissions that I was involved in last 2 years? Well, I think this year we approved the biggest capital budget in last 5 years, and the subsequent board meeting, you're requesting to drop the delivery to 40%. So how it all comes together, because I don't really understand how you keep requesting increased budgets and would like to track performance on a lower percentage on the delivery.
I'll start, and if Reid has any additional information you'd like to provide, that'd be great. We have a couple of challenges in terms of our ability to deliver capital. One is we have and we've reported it again, approximately $200 million backlog in capital that we need to be able to move through the system. We continue to have, as you saw with JD Klein, we have an increasing amount of spend that we need to look at. So, a project like that gets going over the next 5 years. The expectation is to spend another $124 million just on that one project. So we have a bit of I'll refer to it as a capital storm that we're trying to manage in terms of what needs to be done to meet our IRP, the backlog of projects that we need to deal with. Reid has, as you know, has continued to look at the structure, look at the employees, look at the institutional capacity within the engineering group to deliver capital. We haven't turned the corner yet. When we look at what we're dealing with, it's all coming together. We were able to, so far this year, to deliver 24.4%. So we're trying to figure out how we will reflect that in the corporate balance scorecard. I think to continue to assume that it will be 80%, I don't think is realistic. So we're trying to find a measure that works. But we continue to ask for the capital budget submissions, recognizing that with the scale of some of the projects that we're moving forward, we've seen the Utility and Review Board ask an extensive amount of questions that if we don't have sufficient lead time, we'll be even further behind in the plan. So we need to be able to budget for it. We need to be able to ask for the money. we need to be able to have time to go through the process and then to deliver it. So we are really trying hard to move all of the issues forward at the same time. So we're proposed 40. Now, could the number be higher than 40? Yes, absolutely. We're hoping to be higher than 40. Is 40 a significant jump from where we are today? Absolutely. If some of the big projects that we have in motion continue to get traction, we should be able to do better than 40. But recognizing that with the backlog and a 40% of the current budget, we could spend $260 million and still only hit 40%, right? If we were able to move the backlog and 40% of what we've asked this year. So we're trying to figure out how to deal with that capital storm. And this is the proposal we'll put forward, but happy to look at it and provide additional information.
I understand the concerns. I'm just struggling a little bit with the position where the board is, that, you know, if that will be dropped by literally half to 40%, I'm not sure what tools the board will have to ensure that the capital remains the top priority and being pushed forward by the senior leadership. So if we can develop a plan, maybe to perhaps lower for this year, but have a specific plan in place, at least to address it over the next few years. There was some additional staffing approved. I don't feel comfortable with dropping this measure to 40% because, well, there are challenges, understandable, but still capital needs to be invested in an infrastructure that is not being upgraded today, will probably cost twice, if not more, 5 years down the road, in very simplistic terms. So from motion perspective wise, I'm very much struggling with this reduction, and from even from the visibility perspective, I don't believe that 40% delivery is a sign of performance. To me, it sounds like more sign of the underperformance, given all the challenges that Halifax Water has. So my suggestion to my colleagues, commissioners here, would be to perhaps or rework the capital change here and propose some different wording around that, or I'm very much struggling with this as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zaharov. Let's park that thought for a minute. Commissioner Deagle-Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually would like to follow up on Kostia's comment about the capital. A couple of things that, when I read this, I was thinking about, I like the phrase, Louis, the capital storm, right? Because yes, sitting on this commission now and seeing the amounts to deliver on capital projects is huge. And I remember that report that had the recommendation that Halifax Water should grow by this many staff, and we didn't do that. So I'm wondering, is that a factor in any way? Is the amounts that needs to go through the UARB approval process? That was the other thing. And then, and the third point probably was just really right now about industry's capacity to respond to any RFPs that we might have on capital projects, rather, you know, design, construction, all of that kind of stuff. Is there a way to break out the capital expenditures in such a way to know what is outside of Halifax Water's ability and then what's within? I mean, is there any way to look at it that way to see then what would the appropriate metrics be?
I'll look to read for the.
Oh, I would just like to jump in on that. I had the same thought process, sort of Kostya and Kathy had. You know, I wonder if whether we should remove this item in the short term. You know, I think the understanding is you're trying to get a corporate balance scorecard in place for April 1st. Yeah. I think we're all saying the same thing, that on one hand, it is just a scorecard, right? We're not looking to have a scorecard where it's, easy to meet. It is a scorecard, so it is meant to be a bit of a dashboard. So if 40% is the right answer, then, you know, that is what to report on. But I think everyone's aligning in the fact that maybe that line item needs to be reworked, and whether it's tied to the capital plan delivery and a workshop for the board. But I think we're all saying we're not comfortable with that particular measurement anymore.
And I would say with the current backlog, the measure focuses just on the current year.
Oh, okay.
So it's you know, to the point I was trying to make earlier, if we were to spend all of the backlog, that would be $200 million. And our measure for this year would be zero, right? So the measure right now does not necessarily reflect the level of effort and attention of Halifax Water on our capital program. So absolutely would really appreciate the opportunity to go back and to come back with something that maybe there are a couple of measures that we do around capital that would be more helpful. Certainly there have been lots of requests around how we report on our capital. So certainly we can, and we can go either way. We can leave it in, we can pull it out for now and come back with a more, with a more wholesome recommendation in terms of what we should do with capital going forward. We can certainly do that.
Commissioner Kolomicev, do you have a comment on that point?
Yes, I was just wondering if we can keep the existing one, but add an additional measure or indicator, sorry, for spending of previous years, or let's say the outstanding amount. Can we add an extra item to look at that? How much of that 200 million has been spent?
We absolutely can, and maybe if we could have the opportunity to come back with maybe a suite of options that would work for the board, and the board can, you know, we'll have some additional conversation. I think it's any one of those would help explain the story that we're trying to communicate. But certainly to be able to put something that's more wholesome as a way to evaluate Halifax Water's capital program, I think maybe it might be broader than just a couple of measures.
So I think what I'm hearing is there's several comments. We're not comfortable with the current version. What are options to update this but allow you to have a scorecard in place for the next fiscal?
I think one of the options, if the board would like us to increase, they've decided to empty the garbage cans outside my office, so in case you're hearing noises outside. We can certainly increase the percentage from 40 to a different number that the board feels more comfortable with, and we can report against that. I think there was a suggestion made to remove that one for now. I'm not sure that needs to happen at this stage, but we can certainly, the motion could reflect a desire for us to come back with an additional suggestions around how to measure capital.
Any comment, Commissioner Deagle-Gammon?
I think I'm most comfortable with, you know, staff coming back with what they think is reasonable within, you know, a certain scope. I feel uncomfortable as a commissioner to say, you know, yeah, I think it would just be a guess if I came back and said, make it between 50 and 60. Like that's not a realistic thing for me to do, I don't think, as a commissioner. So yeah, I think I'm most happy to say, go back and look at this and come back to the board with what they think would be the appropriate measure. In the interim though, so that we have a scorecard for April 1, is it possible to just put a pause on that one item until something comes back? Is that something that's possible? So that we don't rate on it just in the interim?
Madam Chair, my apologies. I have put a draft amendment to the motion based on the discussion in the chat, if people want to review that. And I'll leave it at that. I do have another possible, I shouldn't say separate option, but connected option, but I'll leave it there for now.
So,
Thanks.
and I just had a couple comments. So I believe we're heading towards asking staff to update the scorecard. And we may have to go to an e-vote. We'll have to see if Heidi agrees with that. So tying on to Commissioner Kolomeitsev's comment, I do think it may be timely for management to relook at average number of days of absenteeism. I think after everything we've been through, I think this particular indicator could also maybe require some rework. Again, based on as every organization, we're looking to ensure that our employees are well supported. So I think, you know, I would appreciate sort of relooking at that indicator, and is there an updated indicator that, you know, isn't sort of so black and white. And as well, my comment was on the average score on internal safety audits. Again, it's showing a target of 90%, and meanwhile, we've shown that we've overachieved well over 95% in the last couple of years. So to me, the internal safety audit score should be, you know, at least 92%, if not higher. And same comment on number of ICI properties engaged. You know, we're showing a trend of 300 plus, and we only have a target of 250. So I think on one hand, we want the scorecard to be, you know, an appropriate, you know, dashboard and indicator for all the right reasons, but I'm not sure we're quite challenging ourselves enough on some of the items that aren't tied to the organizational award. And at the end of the day, it's a report. But I feel like management needs one more look at it to send it back. Commissioner Cuddle?
Yeah, I think, Madam Chair, you raised some good points. I mean, when you look at average score on internal safety audits at 90, we're achieving, you know, we're achieving above that. We need to look at it, but I'm also interested in industry standards, right? So, I mean, I think you're right, as an organization, like, yeah, shoot for the moon, and you know, continuous improvement is important. But I'm also wondering, like, you know, comparing apples to apples, like where do we stand in the broader world of water utilities? Like, are we how do we measure up, just as an indication? Because otherwise I feel like I'm kind of looking at this in a bit of a bubble. I don't know, and I'm not that I want to overcomplicate things. It's just that sometimes it's good to know what, you know, where we stand when I don't have any context.
Yeah, certainly I'm not aware that we've compared ourselves to other people to see how other organizations are doing. It's certainly a piece of work that we can do our best to come up with what others have out there. I think the programs like this tend to be organizationally specific. So, you know, we could certainly see what we can do to compare ourselves to others.
Yeah, and even if it's just a few key indicators, because I do realize that, you know, the corporate scorecard is perhaps not industry-wide applicable, but you know, it is good just to kind of take stock and say, like, okay, like, you know, actually, you know, achieving 96.7% is terrible because everyone else has 100. I don't know, or maybe everyone else has 80 and we're at 97, and it's like, okay, kudos. You know, I think there's nothing worse than congratulating ourselves on things that we don't really know if it's such an achievement or not. So yeah, anyway, that just might be helpful, and it's not about overburdening staff or making things too complicated. It's just you know, good context.
Commissioner Kolomeitsev?
Thank you. I just wanted to add one little note or question on top of what Kostya had mentioned earlier in terms of incorporating cybersecurity awareness as part of the scorecard. My suggestion would be that if there are internal phishing campaigns at any time, that we could use that as an easy measure of security awareness, the results of that. Thanks.
So we have a board workshop coming up in kind of in 6 weeks. I feel like there's a lot of interest in the corporate balance scorecard, and we have a lot of varying backgrounds and skill sets that add to this on the board at the moment. So I'd like to propose to defer the vote on accepting this and add it to the workshop for May 12th. Would that be acceptable? Do I need a motion for that, Heidi, or we just don't vote on the motion?
My apologies. We will need a approval to defer this item to the June board meeting.
Okay, so I would ask for a motion to defer this vote to the June board meeting. Could I have someone put that motion forward?
And
I'll make a motion.
and just to be clear, the motion is to defer item 6.1 corporate balance scorecard 23-24 program from this current meeting to the June 2023 Halifax Water Board meeting.
I'll move to whatever Heidi said.
Thank you, Commissioner Zahara.
I'll second.
Commissioner Deagle-Gammon will second that. All in favor?
Can I have a question on the motion before you vote?
Oh, sorry. Question from Commissioner Deagle-Gammon.
Well, I just want to know before we vote what is the impact to that? I know that you were wanting to have the scorecard up by April 1. So deferring it to April, what is the unintended consequence? We know that it's a good decision and we want to get the work done in the meantime, but what is the consequence for that?
I would say if we make substantial changes to the awards component of the corporate balance scorecard, that would be challenging to implement if we fundamentally change that in June to try and use that to measure organizational performance and the impact on employees. That is potentially the biggest impact. If the items that we're discussing right now don't have an impact on the awards program, but if we were to look at it in its entirety and affect the awards program, then it would have an impact on staff. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. I'm not saying it's not valid, but that is the impact if we were to fundamentally change that going into the June meeting.
Okay. Yeah, that's important for us to know, I think, before we take our vote, right? Just make sure that we know what the impact is. So if there isn't anything huge, substantial difference or whatever that affects the award, we do our work in June, we clean this all up, then that's all well and good. If it had been approved for April 1, would staff see an award between now and June? Does this defer any award to our staff?
So this, what we're presenting today would impact next fiscal year.
Okay, great.
So the current program, the measures that are here before you is for the 22-23 year that was approved last year. To the extent that we meet the gateway measures and the 12 that are there, the award would be paid out to employees based on the previous year results.
Great, good. I just happy to understand.
Great question. Great question. So we'll make sure we capture that in our discussion. And I didn't actually hear many comments on the gateways or the organizational award, but to Louis' point, if we do come up with something that impacts that, then it may have to be a recommendation for the future fiscal year. The rest of it is obviously about reporting and performance. I don't anticipate anyone's working any less hard on any of those items without the scorecard. Okay.
I'm ready for the question.
Okay, we'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Okay, we're nearing our available time. I do have it on good advice that item 6.2, 6.3, and 6.4 can go to an e-vote. So we could defer those to an e-vote. My gut is that 6.4 is a quick item that we could handle. Does everyone think 6.4 is a quick item? Okay, I'm gonna put 6.4 forward before we adjourn, and then we will move 6.2 and 6.3 to an e-vote and discussion online. And so item 6.4 is the stormwater account setup charge. If somebody could make that motion.
I can make the motion.
Go ahead.
Move that the Halifax Water Board, 1, approve waiver of the $25 fee for the creation of new stormwater accounts as required by Section 9 of the Halifax Water Regulations, applicable to new accounts created in areas 1 and 4, as per Board Report Item 4C, 1, dated March 25th, 2021, and 2, direct Halifax Water staff to make an application to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board requesting the necessary approval.
Second.
Commissioner Lovelace has seconded that. Any questions or discussion?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Lovelace.
First of all, I just want to thank you. I want to thank staff for putting this forward. As you've heard loud and clear from residents in Councillor Hensby's and my district, District 1 and District 13, this has been extremely frustrating for customers. Knowing that they didn't ask for these accounts to be created, knowing that many of them weren't aware, again, that this was coming to them. There was, and still remains, a significant amount of confusion in the public. And in light of this approval to move this motion forward, I would like direct staff from communications to actually communicate this effort to the community, because again, there is just so much confusion and frustration, and you've heard from both Councillor Hensby and I about this. So I'm just wondering if staff plan to let residents know that this is potentially moving forward to the UARB, and that the decision for this approval actually sits with the UARB.
Absolutely, we can certainly look at the best way to do that. I think part of our challenge would be timing in terms of how far ahead of our application to Utility Review Board, how long that decision will take. So I think we have a timing issue involved in how we deal with it. Right now, what we've done is, as much as the regulations require us to charge it, we have not added it to the current bill. So people will not be seeing it until such time as the Utility and Review Board, or in case of our board, tells us not to proceed. So if we apply to the Utility Review Board and they say, no, you must charge it, only then will that charge show up on the bill. So as of now, we have not put this charge on anybody's bill.
So I'm confused because it is on people's bills. So anyone who received the bill between 2014 and 2021, if their property is being transferred through a sale, the new property owners are receiving that $25 fee for the creation of the new stormwater accounts. So right. I'm confused about what you just said, Louis.
Sorry, so the accounts that were created to allow us to do the analysis that were required, there's about 4,800 of them. For that initial review and the first round of bills to go out, they were not added the $25 charge. If something has happened after that, they may have been added. But what this motion allows us to do is to say that that original account was created because of this mass update. Those original bills would not have the $25 charge. So if somebody has done something subsequent to that, that would be a new customer being created, and they would get the new customer charge.
Okay, I think it just needs to be clear on what you mean by a new customer. Right. A new customer through the road transfer is different than a new customer who is purchasing property and becomes a customer unknowingly because they've just moved to the province, for example. They've just moved to the municipality, not aware of the bill. So I'm from a lot of those folks who are getting a bill after they purchased their property, not aware of the fact that they were going to get a bill. So I think we're talking about two different instances of what a new stormwater account is.
Yes, we are.
Do you need an amendment to the motion, Commissioner Lovelace?
I don't need an amendment. I think we're clear that we need to work with our communication staff at Halifax Water to ensure that we help people understand the bill and understand this motion as well, knowing that it is up to the UARB. I am receiving requests from residents to have more community meetings, and I can follow up with the comm staff on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Motion is carried. Okay, so as I mentioned, items 6.2 and 6.3 will be deferred to an e-vote, but we don't want to minimize discussion on those items. So I'm going to work with staff to set up that e-vote. We'll probably put a couple weeks timing on that, and we will start as well an email discussion on those in case anyone did have discussion and we've run out of time. So we don't want to miss that discussion, but we are out of time today to address them in today's meeting. So we'll
Madam Chair,
go ahead.
we do require a motion, and I would propose the wording of the motion would be that items 6.2 RDC timing of collection and 6.3 RDC merchant fees be deferred from the current meeting to an electronic vote to be administered by Halifax Water staff.
Could someone make that motion? Commissioner Kent? Could I have a seconder? Commissioner Cuddle? Everyone's in sign language mode. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, everyone. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Mr. Zaharov wins the day. Thank you, everyone. Have a great
Thank you.
day.